Are we back to springing crickets? We're going to come back and forth, up and down, bouncy, bouncy, not get everything done. We're always going to go and do the wrong thing instead of working it out to figure out what we have to do is the right thing. A little bit of an announcement today for technicals. If hopefully you have, those of you who aren't on it, you're not going to see it. You're not going to hear us. We're on Spreaker today. We have a server upgrade going on, and there was no way to avoid it. Thank you to Grimner and Jules to work this out. Hopefully we got it all working. Everybody that has that knows anybody that wants to listen and can't get the broadcast that is hearing me, please tell anybody else to go to the Spreaker player on the behind the Woodshed website at Real Liberty Media, or find a Spreaker player that's connected. I'm not sure if that's at Freedom's Network either, but this will be for this weekend while they do that upgrade. I understand it's a power upgrade. And so that's one thing out of the way. Hopefully we'll have it. We will have the podcast as normal. So the past cast will play. It'll be a matter of, it looks like that encoder's running. I shouldn't have a problem there. I did have a problem starting on the Spreaker, so let's hope that that's going on. I better check over here, make sure we do have that. If there's any feedback, please, from the RLM chat, I appreciate to know that the Spreaker is running. So I think this is also going to be, what do we, BTW, RLM, what was that now? Is it 160? So BTW, RLM 160, I think will be this, for those of you on Pastcast that want to go to the Blogcaster to see the content I'm pulling from. The links are posted post-production. And so you can see what I'm looking at, and I ask you, please, I'm just skimming the surface. Only certain things I might touch even in depth. There's just so much to hit, and there's just so many different interests. I guess my problem is without feedback in particular things, I have to just hit the tops of things in general, so that hopefully I touch something somewhere that interests somebody, that hopefully also say I try to give a discussion on what is important about what we're seeing in the notice. They tell us it's the news. I just look at it as a notice anymore. Thank you for the audio check. Appreciate that. That again, it's this is something that we have to do, and we can do it. It's not a problem. It's just a matter of the mass. This is really like a physics equation. We have to have now the mass of the people moving. There's a few of us that can really do damage, but it's just not enough damage. It's not. It's actually quite a bit of damage, actually, but it's just not the quality of damage that we need. In other words, our lawsuit, and we're using it in more and more places to interfere, letting people in the government, these seats of decision that have the interlopers are being told that you are in agreement with this. This default is the state's agreement that you violated the law, and it treasonously as well. And there's nobody that even tries to come against that. So the problem is how do you enforce it with any, when the system that was in place to enforce and help enforce is the criminal? How do you enforce? And that's why we have to go to a mass of people. Really this issue is in the people, the mass of people deciding they've had enough. We have laid a foundation stone, if I can even give it that much credit. I think it's even bigger, but I'll just leave it to at least one foundation stone people can stand on, and we are using it repeatedly. That wherever we are now using the idea that I've told you that we live in an occupied territory, however you want to conceive of this, it's not being free. It's not even under reasonable constraint. It's not even generally, it's not even equitable, if I can even use the term. It's not in the conscience of any good-meaning people of what we are living in and against us. That I noticed a long time ago, people weren't laying the foundation of the record of the violation. They know it's there. They talk about it. They rail against it. They rant against it, and it just ends up being so much blah blah blah. And it's nothing ever set to written record, which in our Western society is the distinction. The written record is really what made us different. the written record with a body of courts that would recognize the written record as valid, and that which is valid. And in particular, I'd kind of talk here about the land disposal laws. That was what made us different than everywhere else in the world. And that is then just the fulfillment of what we see as the Constitution, allowing for that, and then fulfilling what we were told in the preamble there, and then again in the Declaration of Independence. These seats of decision weren't seats of decision that way. They were actually just implementing a trust. And when you start coming onto this idea of the trustees in office, given that they're true to that establishment, then you see this whole thing is a whole different matter. What we have, though, is we have the wrongness of that coming up because those offices have been usurped and no one paid attention. Some people point it out as being the corporate status, and that can be done. And then if you understand that, I don't understand then why you haven't been taking measures to bring it back to the point where the people were in power and not where corporations are people too. And then I keep asking you, if you keep finding that what you thought was law is not working, then you better sit back and say, well, take the facts that you find and then go apply that to some government in the world of the history of the world, the governments in the history of the world of people. And match that up that way. And you'll find that it's not, what we see today is not the fulfillment of what was made the United States of America different. And really it is a model at the point of, as I focus on the land because it's the law of the land, folks, and that was no joke, although the law of the land that they're imposing through the Constitution Article 6 is not the one you think it is. When I go to the literal law of the land, and that's where all of humanity, if I can call us the little animals that we are around the world, the way, again, this humanist terminology gets us. Men and women approaching this problem amongst themselves, not being different. Again, when there was one, it was okay. When there was two, there was trouble. When there was three, now we have a war. And I don't know why that is. It's just the way we are. And that's the reality that through time immemorial we've tried to resolve this failure in us. That we come to the day that we have usurpers that have molded our idea of what's supposed to happen, that I found, again, I am as affected as you are, but I found something more substantial to reference than a lot of people, and I believe, because the way it turns out, and it's been turning out, it is the more correct way to look at what we were expecting and expected, and that helps us, this law, this soil disposal law helps us to keep firm, foundational. All these words are very important to understand. You have to have, they told us don't build your house on sand. There's a reason for that. So I have a trouble drawing the line in the sand. It means, why are you drawing the line in the sand? Why are you standing on the sand to draw the line? Get to the rock. Get to the foundation. Maybe you don't have to draw that line when you have the foundation. I don't know. That's just, but these concepts, they get us in trouble to begin with. That I try to come back every week as best I can. And this week, maybe, again, only through Spreaker. And I don't know. I should double check. There's not much I can do if you can't hear me, that you do think you have hooked up to Spreaker. One of my feeds is down. No, it's not. There's not much I can do. If you can't hear me and you get a message that I'm playing, if the message can go out again, thank you for listening and trying. If you can't hear, but go to the Pastcast, go to the Blogcaster. I'll have it all up. I'm double checking here technically here to make sure this is all working. It's amazing what starts to fail when things go out. In fact, the startup of the broadcast, because I had to try and turn off the encoder to the normal place of the Shoutcast, it locked up the other. So now it's all working. It has been working. And so just pass the message around. The Pastcast will be available. The Blogcast will be available. And so anyway, getting back to what I noticed as I was coming up through all this, and was that people were doing it not quite right. They were making these big leaps and jumps, and I realized really quickly the judiciary, if I call it the court, even the people's court, really has to take the small steps of linking evidence chain by chain of the link of the chain of evidence. They call it a chain of evidence for a reason. That you have to do that almost everywhere, in particular when you deal with officialness. And that's their downfall, I found out. It's what the downfall of all these interlopers are. It was an adultery. Don't commit adultery, we're told, but that's what happened. We allowed adultery. And so the adultery that was committed was to our a better form of way of living, where we recognize property, we recognize the limits on both the ingress and egress of that, not just the ingress and egress to the property, which everybody has a right to as well. But I'm talking about the boundary that's created in property. And it's not an ideal thing as well, because then it sets up some other ideas of separateness. But in fact, we are creatures of separateness as much as we are, let's say, the tribe that they want to keep foisting down our throat. Remember, these tribes are tied to the UN, the United Nations. They want to put you all in your nice little cozy tribe so they can make it all Ubuntu or whatever, all human. How we're going to work together is in our separate little tribes together under one control, and it's all not going to work. And you find out real quickly when you start looking at land law why that is and why it's important. When you come from the ground up, you come from the foundation, things start to organize as they have to. Reality steps in pretty quickly. And so that kind of gave me some focus as to seeing how I can analyze how some people do it right, some people do it wrong, some people get there almost but don't quite finish, and all these different things that go on about how we're coming to the fact that we've been duped, we've been done in, and there's a better set of people together. They're not better people, they're but better plans. And we abandoned the one that we were supposed to. If we could keep it, we didn't, and there we are today. Now we're starting to fight it. And so people start trying to do these are good people trying to do right, in a bad situation, and in a situation that they didn't really take the time that it took to study. That I try to come behind the woodshed to try and explain at least what I see. And I only have the authority that I tell you is only the experiential stuff that I've been through that tends to be workable. This is not, I don't have many philosophical ideas, and I really am finding frustration in a lot of people that will adopt philosophical ideas currently. They don't realize, they don't really look back. They do a lot of assumptive work to make links back to fortify these they all end up being isms of some sort. And it's troubling to watch because it's a waste of time. It's all the things that aren't going to work. It's an excuse, it's an evasion of what we really need to do. And that's to really focus back to some foundation. The philosophies are really not provable. They're good ideas at some point, but they're not provable. You know, the rancher with a cow, that's some real stuff. That's something real. You're going to have to deal with that cow. You're going to have to deal with the mother nature, and you're going to have to deal with dealing with all that. And that's a place to start from. That I think, and then you have to, don't forget, the land has to be preserved. The only preservation is to the use that the guy or the woman that's living, working with the cow to produce the milk and whatever all the beef and whatever all else that needs to sustain that family. And then, beyond, because it's pretty interestingly efficient. Nature is pretty interesting how much contribution you can pull from nature when done right, even better. But that owner of that cow has to have a place of peace with which to do the work that's important for the rest of us. And so that's how the reality of that is these things I speak to, that the land disposal laws were actually meant to be done. That you now see the interlopers interfering, that you see, we could put titles on these plunderers, these global plunderers, as the New World Order, Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. These are concepts, but these people underneath it are parasites at the highest level of parasiticism. They wouldn't have a clue. They don't have a clue. And when they violate it, you can realize it. They don't have a clue what the importance of having private property is, and giving people the place to do what they can do. And so this interference now is reaching those people that are in the foundational raw materials production sense of the land. They're being interfered with now. There's nothing else for the plunderers to get to but the real wealth, the real life force of people in the world, and to go after the land and take the production from it. And they do that by obfuscation of term, and they do it by obfuscation, obstruction, occulting in our minds, and typically language is used to do that. So that's been kind of driving my focus here. How do we, what is this thing we're up against, and how do we work against it? Why? Because it's really self-preservation. You want to preserve something, it better be you. Otherwise the next guy gets it. And the next guy will come and try and take it, and that seems to be the main problem here. That the laws in the United States for the law of the land was supposed to help fix. It wasn't perfect, but it is the best deal going I can see at this point. It trumps, see, we can't even use that word, can we? It brings on a whole other set of ills as well. But it trumps it lays the foundation to get us down the road that we can at least try to live in the peace and give us an objective basis from which our peace is lived, so that we know we can find the intrusion to that, and that is a social ill that we stop. That's what we call crime. Without that objective basis, there is no understanding about that. And when you affect the people producing the raw materials on the land, you interfere with them, you're really cutting your nose to spite your face, and these people that are of a parasitic mind don't care. Remember, the parasite will kill the host. And so, anyway, focusing on these producers, you now have people lashing out, or what appears to be lashing out. And and I wasn't even going to talk about this, but I wanted to point out at least two errors that I keep telling you about that happen. This condition we live in under the occupier that our lawsuit spoke to and sued the Bar Association as one of the parties. We had 10 parties in our lawsuit. The Bar Association was one. And just so you all know, the political parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, was another party, 2 parties in our suit. So anybody coming by these parties before you today in these elections, in these candidates, is a criminal by their party affiliation. So to me, they're all done. I mean, to me, it's not even a point. You all are allowing a crime. You're going to ratify a crime against you. And the proof of that is not my opinion. It's the lawsuit that we filed in 2013 where those parties failed to come to answer to that charge, that they were committing treason, essentially, against your way of life. They're plotting and planning and conspiring with the Bar Association and the seats of decision in your governments to do so. That your continuation is that frustrating thing I tell you I keep asking you not to do. Stop acting as an accessory to the crime against you. This is not that hard. I know maybe I don't speak so clear. I watch people, they don't listen. It's like I'm wondering, I asked it in the chat room the other night. I think it was are you listening to what I'm writing? Are you reading what I'm writing? We're talking about going to the courts and the attorneys. I said, no, you have to kill the courts. I don't mean that physically. You have to take them out as an authority. And there's a way to do that. I don't know how it came, but I figured this out, and I've used it a couple times. Who is the courts but the Bar Association? So, and then we get to throw the court case in that says that they agreed that they're committing treason. And remember, I've read their paperwork on behind the woodshed. This is not that hard to figure out. This is a global plunder of parasiticism that's on everybody. That if you don't respond correctly, they win. It's just that simple. It's not my rule. It's not like I want to raise the flag and fly it and pound my chest and say, look at how much I know, and go troops, go. It has nothing to do with that. It's just the fact of the reality. We are oppressed and repressed in the minimum by this trade group of all, just a trade group when it turns out to be. They're just an association, this Bar Association. You can't let that go by, but you also can't be overwhelmed by it all. Oh, just say it and now think it's done. Oh, the governments are a corporation and that answers it. No, it doesn't answer it. And then you'll find out in our court case that we didn't do it. I didn't argue that because that seemed to be superfluous actually to what we were actually after. Stopping sustainable development, its imposition on raw materials producers, and land law. But it came up, the status of corporate status of government, of state, came up when the judge, who was a bar member, and a trustee of one of the parties that we sued, tried to terminate the case. Trespassed the case, big time. These are big felonies going on in the court system. But we knew it. There's no court system here, folks. The law has since long gone. And so what you have to do is take it out. And you take it out and you work by the rules of the understandable law that says when you don't answer, you win, right? Kind of the default thing. And we took them out and they couldn't answer. They could have answered, but they didn't. That's a double fault, actually. This is something that doesn't happen, folks. We've even had people that are generally nice people that are attorneys look at this thing and they don't believe what they're seeing. The state does not answer. It has to answer. In our case, it didn't. We nailed these people so many ways to Sunday, and here we are Sunday again. It was not really, it's not funny, but in the context of the statement, it wasn't funny what happened. They could not answer. They could not open that can. And this is how simple this is all is. And so this is what gives me frustration, and it's not a hope. It is an answer. As much as I don't talk about solutions, the solution, if there is one, is the people rising up in knowledge and properly acting. Now, I know we'll never get together, and so that's all utopia idea. But if we were to understand and I think we got it down to 10, so then I focus it down to the Bar Association. That really underlies everything you see in the most part. That if we can focus our energy on these people, we are going to be a lot farther down the road to fixing this a lot quicker. As long as we stay divided, as long as we talk about other things, as long as we think Trump's going to help us, as long as we think that Hillary's going to cover it, any of that nonsense, as long as we think the other guy's going to do it, we're going to suffer the future they want, the one they plan. So this is all really, a lot of them aren't all Bar Association, but when you focus on your strength, you almost can't get away from it. That the raw material producer is being hit terribly. That's why I'm even involved, folks. They went after miners. They should have never ever touched miners, and they started touching miners on these grants and such. And I found out the key. I think it's a key. They can't touch it. They can lie about it, but they can't touch it. And they can't touch it in so many ways. It's not even a question. I had a colleague do it again. Went to a meeting, supposed to be a summit representing miners. It's all those of you that signed the petition. It's these people again trying to come back, impress everybody that they have representative capacity, and they're completely incompetent in the first place. They never asked in the second place, and they never got and received consent in the third place. This also reflects into the representatives in the state. And so all of these people are felons. And my colleague and we talked about how we're going to what subject matter, because you have to constrain. Once they hear you coming with the right answer, they try to shut you down. In fact, they shut a lot of his stuff down, but he was able to go in and intelligently interject these very same points. And so the points got made in the open meeting. This is why I'm saying you can't do it from behind your keyboard. And he went in and he was able to affect people's observations and awareness, and show over time how wrong these people are, how wrong the Bar Association, how ignorant and stupid and criminal they are. And it's not that you call them out and just call them names. No, you point out the black and white that proves it. And so we have the ability to out all these people that are harming us, and very quickly, fairly quickly, compared to how long we've been underneath this slavery, this servitude, that we all agree to. And I don't care about, it doesn't matter to me the status as it's in law. This is inside you that this slavery exists, that you have to throw off. That you start to throw off by engaging that enemy against this being this way of life, this way where property is separate and private to you for the best use that you can put to it, and it ends up aiding everybody. It's really hard not to produce in the world. I mean, how much can you produce before you've had enough for you? That it ends up spilling out. And we've tended to say, well, we can spill out more than we produce, that we're going to make it a market. We have value and time in our life that someone should compensate us for, and that kind of gets things moving along so we can trade, and then that creates the idea about money. We know the story about that. And so we have a way of life that's relatively peaceful. And the only problem is when someone tries to invade that. And I'm suggesting to you that the invasion has been, and unless we stop it, reverse it, and throw it out, you are not going to have the life you thought that really has the potential to be, in the world of things, in the history of mankind, really unique peace. That the government in the district is a warmongering thing. That needs to be fixed too, but I'm talking about down to your property. That the raw materials producers are being affected. They're being affected by frauds and lies, and they don't understand it. And I come every day to show, or every weekend here to show you, bring examples of what's out there to look at, to address, and maybe possibly how to address it, or give an idea of what direction you could go, hoping someone's going to pick that up. That this little thing came along, and it happens to be this Bundy matter. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but I guess I needed to. More came. Here we go. People that don't do it right, that claim that to be doing it right. People that rely on other people that claim to do it right, that aren't going to do it right. And I don't want to go through this whole thing. I just want to point out some things about this to give those of you that are interested in researching and looking into the future to do something for yourself, an insight on how it gets done wrong right in your face, and you don't even recognize it. You just nod assertingly because you think these people have authority and they have a knowledge, and you don't even compare it to anything. And that's really the hard work on us to really get this straight. And I'm only as right as my study to show it. But I think when I can identify errors, again, I've told you the model and the theory is that these attorneys are going to violate you, and you won't actually know it unless you know you're being violated. Well, if you know that much, usually you find out the attorneys are going to be violating you, and you don't have them around you. Remember, we sued the Bar Association. How can we even use an attorney to do anything for us? I'm telling you an internal deep secret here. You got to really look into this. When I tell you that there's no attorneys that can be on the court on the case, then think about who the officers in those places are. Think about who constructed and established those courts. And you may start to appreciate how well we have been occupied and how deeply and comprehensive we have been and what it's going to start to take. I barely give you even the tip of an iceberg. I don't even know if I even give you that when you start to see it. But once you see a little bit of it, you see the whole thing. And that's why I'm encouraged. There's nobody that doesn't get involved that doesn't see an immense thing here. So let me go back. And Ammon Bundy apparently filed the paper. In fact, it says that Ammon Bundy filed the paper. And I wanted to point out a couple things for those of you that are really interested in this, because it was sent to me as, oh great, they're defining jurisdiction. This is what they want to do. This is what you want to do. This is what you want to do. But I have a different view on how you do that, and in particular with our knowledge about what the Bar Association is going to interfere with, that I can go pretty quickly in and look pretty quickly on where the failures are. I told you already that Ammon Bundy, believing that he's going before an Article 3 court, and that was published on his attorney's website, was a serious problem. And that he didn't know that he wasn't in an Article 3, and they haven't made any objection to the Article 1 court, Article 4 court that they're in. The United States District Court is a territorial court, having no Article 3 capacity at all. Our lawsuit shows that. Absolutely proves it. And believe me, I learned that from the statutes. I just didn't originate this stuff. I didn't just say, the Article 1, Article 4 courts don't have competency. No, the statutes tell us that. Some of you that flout the 1871 and want to talk about that it makes a corporation and this and that and the other, if you really looked at what it says, you'd have your answer. That's another part of it. And then we have court cases. So I came with authority to show that these courts are not competent to hear Article 3 matters. That's how I know. And the judge agreed, because he defaulted on his quo warranto that he had duty to respond to. He committed fraud when he didn't answer. So we got all this on record. This is no big deal. This is not even a question now. The only question is everybody going to understand the power of what happened here a few years ago now? 2.5 years, I suppose. That I look at this paper that was just filed, and I hear lots of people rallying that this is the paper to fight jurisdiction. And I found a couple errors. So I just want to go through quickly with that, what those are, so that when you get it, I'll put the link in later. The blogcaster will have it. You can read more of it. I'm just going to read a couple parts. And then read it and test what I'm saying to you, how this fails, and tell me whether or not you see a different one, how you can find a different authority that makes it work, how you maybe see that I'm correct, maybe if you can agree and then prove it. Don't just take my word for it, that you can prove it. You can go do the research and prove it. Or you find a whole different thing why it passes or fails. And look and see if whether or not, importantly, they are substantiated. But right here it says this is a declaration of defendant Ammon Bundy's unopposed motion to extend deadline for motion to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction. Declaration of defendant Ammon Bundy's unopposed motion to extend deadline for motion to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction. First of all, the word defendant. That's wrong. He's not challenging the jurisdiction, isn't he? So now he's in that jurisdiction. It's an Article 3 court. Now how do we know that? Because they go on the top of the page and you'll see United States District Court, District of Oregon. United States District Court, I've just told you, is a territorial court without competent jurisdiction under Article 3 matters. So he's a defendant inside an incompetent court, and he hasn't challenged that. And this is a declaration of the defendant, Ammon Bundy's unopposed. Well, we look at the first line says, I, Lisa Casey, declare and state that I am one of the attorneys of record herein for the above named defendant, and I make this declaration in support of the motion to extend deadline for motions to dismiss of lack of jurisdiction filed herewith. Well, this is the attorney's declaration. Now, there's a certification that an attorney has to be making in these processes, that what they think is true and correct and substantial, because Rules 11, I think it is, puts sanctions if these aren't, and they don't make that statement that these papers are correct before the court and not done for any due delay and all this other nonsense. You can find all the rules. Just follow the rules they're there to do, and this is supposed to be that statement. But if you listen to what they're saying, this goes way beyond. Let me throw in another conundrum. A declaration by an attorney at the point of evidence is irrelevant. It's not admissible. So if this declaration is beyond just saying that, I studied the matters before you and this is proper before the court to spend time on it, if that's more than that, then it's irrelevant. It's not admissible. But let me go down to see what they use. And I'm not going to go through on and on. I'm just going to go to 2 parts. So this is a declaration by the attorney, not Ammon at all. And this is what happens. He's now incapacitated by the representation. He's got no statement here at all. And what she's saying has no bearing at all on as evidentiarily at all either. And so she's just instructing the court, giving advance knowledge of what the argument's going to go be. And so I wrote down to rule number 3. A defendant further intends to argue that once statehood occurred for Oregon, Congress lost the right to own the land inside the state except for purposes outlined in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, the Enclave Clause of the United States Constitution. That's a failed statement, folks. And I went quick without, I'll give it a little bit of an insight here, but that's a failed statement. That Congress lost the right to own land inside the state because of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. I've discussed Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 in the context of Chris Ann Hall being incorrect and Ken Ivory, another attorney, being incorrect. When they talk about the state being brought into statehood, what document did that, folks? We have to go to what they call the Enabling Acts, But in Oregon, it's called the Oregon Emissions Acts. And if you go read Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, I told you there's 2 words right in there, or 3 words, that qualify that as properly acceptable to be utilized, and then directs us to the document that does that clause reservation of ceding land. That the Oregon Emissions Act is the document you have to go look at instead of this Constitution. And it says it cedes these lands back to the United States for what? And this is the key. But it does say in that document that the lands are ceded back to the United States government upon Oregon statehood. I'm not going to analyze the deeper stuff on this. It's beyond what they need here, so that's why I'm not going to discuss it. But first of all, this comes in as an argument, and I tell you, never bring an argument to a fight that you don't have a discussion on the answer. If you're not in that seat of decision, don't bring the argument. Bring the fact of the failure of the other side to be able to claim. That's what you bring. What do you do to do that? You bring title. You bring title to the land, and you show how your title's better than the other guy, not the defective part of the other guy. That doesn't fly either. Defendant further intends to argue that once the statehood occurred for Oregon, Congress lost the right to own the land inside the state is wrong. It's a failed argument. Admissions Acts ceding land to the United States proves that on its face. that this argument is going to fail, folks, right off the bat. And these people are the attorneys that are going down this Ken Ivory, United States, Utah imposition of a state now controlling the public lands fiasco, wrong-headedness, improperness that is going to defeat this whole thing right before your eyes. And the mining law is there as the sore thumb evidence of the fact. That's how I know a lot of this is the way it is. I've told you I talked to Ken Ivory when he did his traveling road show. I presented to him 5 errors in his opinion, and he agreed that those errors were there. And he said we'd work them out in the future. Well, what he did is he transferred over some things. He obfuscated some facts. So the next time his traveling roadshow came out, they didn't show anybody who didn't read, didn't understand. Those little facts that were the telltale points of the failures of his argument were not in his presentation. That's the amoeba, folks. That's the system working against you. Now, we had anticipated this, and so we have an additional tact. When the second roadshow came with my colleague now, he's now understanding what's going on. He threw it out. We were able to expose the problem, and a couple more now, because when they shifted out and removed some of those facts, they broke the link of chain of evidence of their logic. And so the Admissions Acts of Oregon that brought the very thing that they talk about, that brought the statehood, the Oregon Territory into statehood, is the very same document that cedes the land to the United States for purposes of ownership. For what, though? Not for the purposes of ownership. It was for the purposes of ownership, for the purpose of disposal back to private use. That's the missing link on all of this. And these attorneys don't want to say that. I need you to know that, because that's what we're focused on. That's how this thing actually works. That's what makes the mining law a trust for the mineral estate. The dominant estate underlying all land is in trust as disposed to you and me, waiting for us to go get those minerals out, because they're very special. This is a mineral estate. It's a very special estate. This is not a resource as these snake oil salesman attorneys try to sell you on redefining mineral estate and mining as a resource. Folks, once you dig the mineral out, it's gone. It doesn't resource. Right? It's a source. And this estate was given to you and me, and those out of the country that intend to become Americans. It's been given to you too. This is in trust, and it's a disposal. And that was required under the same Admission Act that they claim the United States lost right to own the lands inside the state in the lands not disposed. That's a wrong argument. Let me go down now. I've spent too much time, I think. A lot to say. I could go on and on. I'm not here to prove my argument. I'm just here to point it out. You go and do the research. But let me go down to number 7. In addition to putting evidence in the record about land ownership, let me suggest something right here. I'll read this through, but I had to stop. They're going to put evidence in the record about land ownership. They need to put the evidence of the ownership, folks. You see how the attorneys twist this? They had torn the property out, imply it's in the government, arguing fraudulently that it's in the government, and don't show who actually owns it. So they're going to give you evidence about land ownership. It's not evidence of the ownership, folks. What's the simple evidence of the land ownership? It's not your deed, it's the patent. If the land has been conveyed, there's a patent for it. If it's not, it still sits in trust in the United States, not in the state. The reason why they did that is because the states were not trustable to have this land and not maintain a remainder interest that was eliminated when they ceded it to the United States, which is the very same remainder interest you find out if you don't understand what's going on, and they say, well, your land and improvements is taxable. That's the very same interest that was eliminated in the cession of the lands to the United States in trust for disposal. And yet they'll attack it on you, and you'll believe that's the truth. But here it goes. In addition to putting evidence into the record about land ownership, the defense also needs to provide evidence about foundational documents from the Federal Convention of 1787. These documents will be critical to the court's consideration about jurisdiction in this matter. These documents were reportedly not discovered until much of the case law surrounding the enclave and property clause was created. The defense fully intends to cite all contrary authority to the court, but these documents will inform the court's analysis in light of the case law surrounding these constitutional provisions. Then it doesn't have a number. It says, I hereby declare. This is the statement. Again, the declaration of an attorney is not evidentiary. It's just a statement. Has no force and effect. But you notice they're talking about putting in case law. That's the common law, folks. That's the judge-made law. You don't do that to a disposed property. The disposed property, the law is made in the patent. The law is made in the agreement to create the state. That's like a patent in a way. That's an act, an agreement with express and implied contract that cannot be defeated. Nobody, no court has jurisdiction over it. It goes by its term and neither party can even change it. Did you hear that in there? No. They talk about some 1987 convention and this and that and the other, on and on and on, all the stuff that's irrelevant. Not the ownership, but they're talking about ownership. They cite common law. They're going to incorporate possibly incompetent discussions by other opinions of judges who had no competency over the disposals. And in that, they never actually talk to the lack of jurisdiction of the court, do they? If they're going to do that, why didn't they develop this further? Why didn't they point out that there had to be a cession of the land, or why did they point out that the land was actually disposed? Because they don't do that, they're not actually challenging jurisdiction. They're handing it over to another bar member to find that it's going to be okay. I need to go to number 6 as I see this, as I just talked about the reacquisition. Without showing the sequence of the deeding and homesteading of the land, can I stop there? Can you hear the problem? Without showing the sequence of the deeding of the homestead of the land, that the court will have not have sufficient information to determine the constitutionality of the government acquiring the land, and therefore jurisdiction of the case. What is that even a statement? Without showing that the sequence of the deeding of the homesteading of the land, the court will not have sufficient information to determine the constitution of the government acquiring the land. What is that? The deeding is not what you're interested in anyway. It's the patenting, right? And the homesteading is just evidenced by the patenting. And what about the Mining Act? What about any other land acquisitions and disposals to the surface, on top of homesteading, that were perfected? This is a failed argument. They're talking toward reacquisition, though. So let's go on. In the event the court rules adversely to the protester in this case, the defense wants to ensure the record is sufficient for appellate review, but they're not going to put any land possession documents in, right? They're going to do deeds. Deeds are a failed imposition. It's like a license. That's what brings you subject to all these codes and regulations. The patent is forever to the limits of the statement inside it. That they show that the sequence of the deedings and the reacquisition, the government acquiring the land, folks, this is incomplete. Because if the government came back and acquired the land, they acquired it in a particular status. If they speak to that, which they're not here, it would show that the federal court has no jurisdiction at all. Why? Because the status that the government repurchases after the patent, is a status that's not a sovereign. It's as any proprietor and is subject to state court. Do you hear that in there, folks? Do you hear them speaking specifically about the fact that when we produce the evidence of the disposal of the soil and the reacquisition of the government by documents that we'll produce, we will show that the government is not sitting in a sovereign capacity, but as a proprietor as any other, subject only to state court. The federal court has no jurisdiction, whether by Article 1, Article 3, or Article 4. We're not reinterpreting the grant. That would be a federal question. We are only showing you that the reacquisition the government took less than sovereign because of the nature of land disposal law. Did you hear him say anything about the reacquisition documents show that the United States government holds as a mere proprietor as any other subject to state law? Did you hear that statement, folks? No. That's a failure. So this document, there's all more I can go. Tons and tons and tons. This is what the attorneys do. And the shame is Ammon Bundy apparently agrees with this. And so someone professing to have studied and researched and all this other nonsense that they claim to have done hasn't done a thing that way. These are the same people I told you I got a word in just before Finicum got executed and told them you got trouble coming from the north. You're going to have to reposition and recondition what you think you know and do it in a different way. Don't head out yet. You got to hunker down and restructure what you're saying to people so they understand that the people coming from the north have no actual authority. But as you can see, the attorneys are there to subvert the actual discussion, which is not an argument. It's simply the establishment of existing facts. You can't make those up. Those exist or they don't. Land law is really simple that way. The paperwork and documents prove what was disposed and what was not. The status is, I tell you, not to get all hung up on. It's, the corporation, it's this, it's that, you're a debtor. No, just find out what the elements and the facts create and go from there. In this case, a reacquisition by the United States government of land after patent puts them in a proprietor status, which is not a sovereign and not subject to federal overview. It's a state law matter. How do I know that? That's in the mining law as well for anybody that looks. It happened a year before the mining law to show you how bizarre how certain the land law is and how bizarre the mining law seems to be. Miners had title before the Congress disposed the land in trust to the miner. The law is the law of possession. You can read it for yourself. I won't have this link. Look it up. United States Code, what is it, 30? Section 53, I think it is. Happened in 1865. It's the law of possession. You win or lose on the strength of your title. That's it, folks. The government has to have title. Once it shows its title has been reacquired, it's a proprietor. It has to show a higher right by its title, not the weaknesses of another. These are pretty simple laid out principles that I don't hear coming out of this document. So those of you that are rah-rah, we're going to challenge jurisdiction by this document. This is a declaration by an attorney. It's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the law. They're not even telling you that they're going to submit enough to do what they need to do to actually throw down the jurisdiction. What am I talking about? I've actually just shown you it's not even about an Article 3 court, is it? It's about whether or not the federal court can even take the case if they actually argued it. If they presented the case the way the facts and the titles require. See, I slipped in there myself making the argument. No, you don't make an argument. In land law, you either have the possession of something or you don't, and you can prove it. It's really simple. Once there is a document that is a conveyance, the federal court is divested of all authority over that conveyance and any argument about its use where there's a contention of it by two proprietors. Otherwise, if the state comes in, it becomes takings. It becomes a governmental imposition that they have a standard to meet, which is your public use and public benefits, which land use for the purpose of conveyance is at the highest. It's not a deed. It's not an agreement to pay taxes. You understand, like oh darn it just slipped from my mind. The lady lost her house due to Pfizer getting the land, and it was all about the tax base. Why? Because she produced a deed, didn't produce a patent. There's no imposition right for the state over a patent unless they can show a better use, not the way it was constrained by the court, but as conveyed by Congress. And the conveyance is not challengeable except by the parties or someone affected, and only upon a fraud. And maybe only for a certain time, as far as I can tell. There might be a limitation on that. Again, this disposal is to settle the land. And so my point about all this is that so-called Ammon Bundy knows what to do. He's got an attorney, failed. That's a failed position. This document opens up as a failure. It goes to number 3. It's a failed argument. Number 6 is actually not developed enough. And number 7, does not even develop what is going to be presented to the court that would actually be evidence of the facts that they even claim they could produce. All right, so this is, I don't know. Again, it could be. I can go on and on about this stuff. I don't intend to. Don't want to. I've spent a lot more time than I thought it was going to be. There's a lot more study behind to support what I'm saying. I'm talking to you from my knowledge of how this works, not to give you all the proof. I give you some proof. You could actually document what I've said, and it would be fair enough. But again, Cliven Bundy was told by my colleague when over his situation how his grant to the use of the surface was paramount, and that he was being violated by the USDC court in Nevada. And even after he was told all that, he went in Nevada and he did it wrong himself. I identified that as well. So there's people that hear this stuff, but you don't do it right. And this is why I keep asking, are people listening to what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying. I mean, you listen to what I'm saying. Do you hear what I'm saying? And part of it is not reading the black and white. I ask you to go read to understand and get how this works in your mind. It's really not that difficult once you break down what you've been told. I'm sitting here. It's really not that difficult. That's all that keeps coming to my mind, folks. It's right. We have it. We have it to expose these criminals. You're watching a theft by extortion in the attorney right here to present what they claim is a competency they have to do this paperwork, and then not produce the fact that the facts they need to support the challenge. First of all, they didn't argue that the USDC court was incompetent in the very first instance. Then they bring a paperwork that she believes is subject to that court, and then doesn't even show how they're going to become evidentiary in the way they need to support a challenge to it. And then she telegraphs what they're going to do to the other side on how, and they've already got it figured out. And they don't even, I'm sure, and some of this they're really truly ignorant of. They may not even understand how vicious the DOJ has become in supporting an international imposition to even deny the words in the law, and the judges will agree with it, showing again the Bar Association is one of your main adversaries. They put you in a court. They called it adversarial. You didn't realize it was that system against you and your property. As I said last night in one of the chats, the courts are crime scenes. My question to you is, do you know more than just internet blah blah blah? Do you know how to prove it? If you listen behind the woodshed and really listen to what I'm saying, I think you may have at least the vocabulary to start to be able to prove it. But if you're really not really hearing me, what I'm saying, you're probably still wondering. And I'm asking really, tone it up. We got to have people that know what's going on. I just went pretty quickly through that. But when you go look at the Admissions Act, you could not make the statement made in number 3. You could not know that presenting what's said in number 7 would be sufficient. And to not state that you are going to explain that the government is not a sovereign but a proprietor and only has the rights it has, not in sovereignty, but as a proprietor, equal to everyone else, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. And when there's a court case about the reservation, about the meandered lines and all that, it's very interesting that what they actually reserved. And the reacquisition, again, falls underneath what I've just said. It wasn't outside the meander line, which means it's inside the lake. These are reacquired land, not the lake. They reserved that. So these are lands outside the outside the inside meandered lines, which the court said was still held in the United States as a non-navigable lake. Because some property owners who were not in the case, it was stated by the state of Oregon, ought to have had property rights to the center of the lake if it's non-navigable. But meandering does something else to the land. And so you have to understand all these simple things. And the court the court found, and I have to find it seemed accurate enough, found against the state of Oregon's assertions, which tells you those attorneys didn't know what the hell they're talking about. And so you want to go to an attorney or the state, or you think you're going to the state and to try and get justice, and these people don't have a clue, actually. It's time to get enough knowledge to be able to identify who the real culprits are. This case is going down. This action's not. This little motion to extend time might extend the time, but what they're going to bring and all the time wasted, and all these people are sitting in jail, for all this time that's being wasted to do all this, all these extensions of time, to bring the wrong argument, to wait for the decision, to get the right answer to the wrong argument stated. As I told you, bring wrong question, they'll give you the right answer. That's what this is going to be. So those of you, I guess the whole point is, I get lots of people this last week, we got a jurisdictional argument. Folks, it's not. It's not even close. So don't get your hopes up. If I'm wrong, okay, well then they get a jurisdictional challenge. It'll only be that court won't take it, but that's about impossible. But it will be if this decision goes this way, it'll be on the wrong reason, I can tell you that. And it will not advance your knowledge about how to properly do it. And that's a whole different type of subversion to you, as I can conceive. They end up getting what they want by tailoring how you think about something, and they will take what appears to be a short-term loss for a long-term win. But I see it pretty clearly here. Number 3 is a failed argument. As soon as that goes down, and they claim that the land is still owned by the United States, and it is. It's owned, but what doesn't get added is it's owned, but owned as a trustee because of the clause for redisposal. That's going to get lost in all this. Not in me, but in those that listen wrong, and the courts certainly are going to lose that. But as soon as that argument says that the United States has ownership, this argument's done. It doesn't matter the rest that they put in. I hope you gathered that as well. And so the country's going down. The country's going down because it's losing the actual law that protects the land upon which we are productive. And they said in the Agenda 2030 they're going to control production and consumption, correctly? And I've told you they're going to do it by convoluting the production with commerce. Well, these courts, these USDC courts, these are somewhat commerce related. They go through the FRN, they go through the business side, if you will, bankruptcy. See, it's all connected. How they are going to take this, they are going to control production by wrongly characterizing it as production. Now, I don't know why other people don't see that. I can kind of understand why, but it's pretty clear to me what's going on. It's pretty clear to me how they're doing it. And this is only there's 7 points they put here. I've only touched 3. Just paragraph after paragraph of this document is a failure. It looks good, though, for everyone looking at it. Oh, like I said, lots of people came to me. Oh, look, they're making a jurisdictional argument. And I had to come back and say, I need to tell you, you're not looking at what you think you're looking at. Here's a couple of examples. And I kind of went that through with you here now and didn't know it was going to take quite so long. But if you're listening to what I'm saying, you're hearing how it's done right in your face, wrong, and yet there's a right answer. So we either have what, folks? Just look at the attorneys. And I don't like to feel bad. Blame anybody. I really don't. But we have to take a reality check at some level. These people are one of 2 things, as far as I can tell. They're either completely incompetent and they're lying about their service, or they're in on the plan. They're either incompetent or they're in on the plan. Is that somebody you want to hire? Is that someone you can trust? Is that someone you hand your capacity, and then because of their representation, your incapacity before a system that's set up to do the takedown in every instance? And when I just told you that you now don't have a court system or people that can actually defend you, when you go in, you better have the right answer, and they'll still come out with the wrong one, as we did. They had to go silent with us. Then they tried to do an obfuscation, so we had to be able to check that, which we did all that. You'd have to be able to do the same thing. It's not that hard, but the point is you have to do it. When you don't have a court that you're looking at, What system of government are you in when you don't have a judiciary, folks? Is a reality check that you need to make. So this is a little deeper thought. And this is why I say it takes you to see all this and understand this to be able to start to think clearly again. And that starts to set your mind on how to think clearly and how to cut through the criminals and just put them to where they belong, and we get back to what we need, but we need more of us. A person screaming in the street that someone's just committed a bank robbery is not enough. And then I see evidences like in Iraq, some police officer shot some people sitting at a cafe over some argument. The people came out and went after that cop. They weren't going to take that. If they arrested the cop, the people arrested the cop right on the spot. Now, the system will get a hold of it. Maybe that guy won't get prosecuted as a cop. It's an occupied force anywhere. It's all military everywhere. The point is, those people didn't stand around. They went to the guy was dead, but they went to the aid of the society that's going to be the victim of this cop that thinks he can just shoot somebody over a disagreement. You see that happen in the United States? And so goes our country. Look up quickly and I see a comment, land is owned by the earth, Grimner says. Humans and corporations are just occupying it. Well, the earth is there. What we're talking about is the productive use of the earth. And how we over time have come to understand how we can do that. And to do that because of our nature somehow, for some reason, we found it's much better to isolate sections of land and allow people to put their productive skill to that. And typically that's directed by the land itself. That's why the mining law is important, because the minerals are where they are. You just don't invent that. You have to find those where they are. That takes priority. That's why it's called a dominant estate. And then agriculture grows better. You have agriculture, different types of agriculture grow in different places. So those places have to be sought out as well. And so this is about productive use, not just about ownership. It's about possession and use. Essentially, it's agreed slavery in a way to the productive use you can make of the land. At least the way it is on disposal side. Now, once you get it, it's up to you. Then you make it whatever you want. That's been some of the problem why a lot of the laws, the federal laws for land disposal have to be adjusted, because people take advantage. This is the bigger reality I see. If people were good and nice and all that, we probably wouldn't have these problems. But it's because we have people that are scurrilous. It's the very agenda we're up against, trying to take it all from us. That very nature is why we have these guidelines called laws. And that's really all. It's like a contract to show where the limit of good action is. And then hopefully you have remedy. Once you've identified it, you have some remedy against that wrong action. And so the way we've established ourselves. Yes, thank you, Grim. Grimner adds, just philosophically speaking. Well, that's, I guess, the thing. We can talk to, yes, I agree. And I think that becomes from a better spirit, too. To be able to come from that space, I think is good. And I'm, again, speaking from the reality of the nuts and bolts of what we do as people against each other and how we've come to here to resolve it. And we've resolved it by saying there will be an organization we call government that is, in its innocence and utopian side, because it's there to be worked this way, is there to protect people to be productive on the land and be able to throw from their mind, for the most part, that they will be invaded by an outside force, whether that be their neighbor or someone coming from the Mongol plain. And so, again, not throwing everything out, trying to keep tied up with the good stuff is kind of what I do here with the land disposal and law of the land. That we can use it as literally the bright line. I use it to immediately find, in my estimation, immediately find the failures of people that profess to be competent in disposal law of the land and laws generally, these attorneys who are absolutely incompetent. And then we find out worse. Not only are they incompetent, they don't intend to be competent. They intend to get away with their theft. And so they just make it look good enough to do that in your eyes, that I'm trying to open your eyes more to see how subtle this theft really is. It's It's quite amazing how ingenious these criminals are. I mean, I've said criminal genius is beyond me. I just have to find out whether or not it hurts anybody, because I don't know about keeping up with criminal genius. It really is a genius. And I see that genius working in the Bundy case. Not happy about it. I haven't been happy about all this. I have told some people behind the scenes, there's no ear for what I have, no ear to hear what I have to say. And I've asked you before, and as I did on the email discussing this with somebody else, for those of you that have a connection, maybe you can pass this on. And I hope that they start considering this a lot better. For all y'all that are looking, if you are into this, I don't want you to be thinking that this challenge to jurisdiction was actually a challenge. I see it to be a deceit. And I think it's just buying in, you're asking the wrong question and going to get the right answer, and it'll make you think that there is no challenge that can be made. And you won't understand the subtlety. And that's only the ones, folks, this is only ones I can see. I'm not even talking about the ones I can see. I'm not even talking to all of them, but there may be all kinds here, that are all kinds of failures in this in these things that I haven't even come up with. You can find those as well. The point is that there's so much that goes wrong. When you find out that the government truly is limited, and how limited, it's quite an amazing thing that actually was created for us to this point in our the evolution, the evolution of mankind. And I don't mean that by species, okay? So, we have a lot here, a lot of food for thought, and a lot of proof to make if we will just step up and do it. That I didn't, like I said, I wasn't even going to talk about this. I'm getting kind of the point why. And then I said, I'm here to tell you and give you the eyes to see. And here's 3 simple points I can point out. That at least 3 is facially a failure. Absolutely a failure. This is the same argument and the same problem that Ken Ivory has, the same argument that at least Chris Ann Hall and these other so-called constitutional attorneys have. They want to focus on this one constitutional clause, and they forget that there's a little clause inside that clause that says seed. And that's exactly what happened at the point of the Admissions Act or Enabling Acts. And there was a reason why it happened, and yet they look right past that. And then you get these attorneys based on that. I'll bet that may have been even promoted to the attorneys. And the attorneys are kind of sitting back, okay, I'll press that argument. I know it ain't going to go nowhere, but we'll press it anyway, so you think I'm helping you out. Because if they were competent, they wouldn't have written that, folks. As I just told you, I've added my interpretation. I think that would make a better presentation to the court. I know it was kind of extended by dialogue, but you get to the root of what I was saying. I think you'd make a much better case for the facts to be developed to show not only does the United States government not sovereign, not only does it not have the power that it wielded to the courts to go make these criminal complaints, but the federal court had no jurisdiction over these matters in the first place. Well, how? Not because of the Constitution, because the status of the reacquired land by the government. Under what? Under the duty to dispose, and having done so and fulfilled that, come back and reacquire. Didn't steal it, reacquired it. Well, whatever hook or crook they did, they got someone to agree to dispose and part with their property. I'm not even looking at that. But they reacquired the land. I'm going ahead and right here and agreeing they did it. I would say lawfully acquired. I'd want to actually look at the acquiring. Is it lawful what they done there? But notwithstanding, now let's give it to them just for the sake of this discussion. That was not taken as a sovereign. And did the proper party take it? Did the BLM take it? Because if they did and they reacquired, they are a corporation. That's a whole other train of thought. I don't get all weirded out about it. That's just a status to me. And then you have to think about it. Why do they take as a corporation and not the government? It's because they take as a proprietor. It's pretty simple. I'm going to throw a little tidbit out to you. Have you all gone down and figured out to go check in the state of Oregon whether or not the Forest Service of the BLM has filed their registration agent papers as a legal entity, as a corporation, to acquire the land and do business in the state? Has anybody thought to do that? Am I the only one that asks these questions? I hope some of you have. I mean, I want to know that my listeners are really kind of working this thing over big time. And you're really empowering yourself. You got an engine fired up right now, and it's getting more and more momentum. Have you found the statute that says when the BLM acquires land, it does so as a corporation? No big whoop. No, okay, if they're a corporation, did they file in Oregon to do business in Oregon? No big whoop. It's just what the law is requiring, because there's a reason behind it. It can't acquire as the sovereign. And it does not acquire at the sovereign. And I'm just flashed in my mind. Anybody goes to JeffersonMiningDistrict.com, go find important cases, a little button somewhere. Go find the Menard Run oil case. And you'll find where the Forest Service had property. It is no different than a proprietor as any other. It's a local property owner, having all the same rights as they are gave or given or acquired that anybody else was gave or acquired. They're not the big bad wolf. They're not Uncle Sam that way. And yet everybody makes a big hullabaloo about the United States government being a corporation. In fact, it's a weakness. When you find it comes in that capacity, treat it in that capacity. Don't make a big deal about it. When they come after you that capacity, you come back. That's what the challenge is about. Use the proper tools. Most of the tools are there, at least the ones I've found that I can use. So I guess to me, this is not even a big deal. But to watch when I can see that these tools are there, when I can see that there's a hierarchy of the law from the land, the foundation of the law of the land, and it's being completely ignored by those professing to know the law, I watch a crime, folks. Pretty simple. And then I seek out to find out whether or not they're doing it correctly. On top of the fact I can see they're a criminal, the odds are they're not doing it correctly. And so I'm going to be able to, let's frolic through legal land. Let's go find all the places they've failed. And we build that dossier up on them. This is their weak, this is the Achilles heel that everyone rails against. There's rants and raves against it. They don't use this fact. No, they succumb to these apparent authorita and the system that apparent authorita is fabricated to defeat y'all. Now, when you start to address it correctly, there's no silver bullets. You're looking at a criminal. Now the rubber meets the real rubber starts to meet the reality meets the perception meets the reality, the tangible. And until we get more people seeing what I see, as quickly as I can see it, and understand the processes that are in play, and the last final push we have to do en masse, until we have people do that, it's not looking too good. And yet we're that close. I just in a way, I kind of get a little excited. Won't that be a neat revolution? Let's get off the wheel revolution. Okay, you guys want to do a revolution? Let's try that one. See, but I'm not saying get on the revolution. I'm actually saying re-impart the power that the people have and reconstitute the government the way it was supposed to do by throwing out these people that are pretenders, essentially. And they're criminals, but I mean, just even pretender, even giving them the thought about, well, that should have when I told you, the folks that the attorneys don't know what a bill of attainder or an ex post facto law is, that should have told you something. That should have rang bells long time ago when they don't know that. That came up again at the summit. We'd be able to rub their nose in that dirt that they don't understand. And that's the very problem. They're violating those two provisions to be imposing upon you. See, to me, it's just, I told you, it's a target-rich environment. The evidence of the crime is everywhere. And it's astonishing that we're in the trouble that we are. At that point, I don't know. I see us going down. I do see us going down. Not that I'm praying for it. Not that I'm hoping for it. Not that I work for it. It's just that there's just only so much a guy can do in the world. It was really our Achilles heel that made us, we gave you a republic if you can keep it. That's the mass being spoken to. And so the mass must speak. It must stand up on its own. It must have the fortitude to do so. It must have the knowledge. And it can't speak outside of its rightful power. Or else it sounds stupid. It does. It really sounds ignorant to me, even when I hear it. It's the same hesitation I had when I'm seeing a lot of people saying, here's the jurisdictional argument. It's not, folks. It's really not. So, the United States is going to go down. The United States of America, the people of America are going down. And there's a way we can stop it. And I hope I here every week to try and give you some insight that maybe you can do your part to right the wrong you see, whatever it is. Otherwise, we're going to see what's come upon other places, I tell you, is a mirror for what's happening and happened, I think, in large part, though it doesn't look quite like it to America. And I'll get back to my tabs. Way long ago. Suicide of Venezuela was an article I read. I found it very interesting. You might want to read this one. And then, said the author says, and who was it? I don't see the author the way this is posted. I never expected to witness the slow suicide of a country, a civilization. I suppose nobody does. Let me tell you, there's nothing epic about it. We who have the privilege of travel often look down in satisfaction at the ruins of ancient Greece, the Parthenon lit up in blues and greens, the Acropolis, the Colosseum in Rome. We walk through the dusty streets of Timbuktu and gaze in wonder at the old mud mosques as we reflect on when these places had energy and purpose. They are not sad musings for those of us who are tourists. Time has polished over the disaster. Now all that is left are great old buildings that tell a story, and when things were remarkable, not of how quietly they fell away. There was no real reason, not really, but we tell each other as we disembark our air-conditioned buses, these things just happen. Nothing is forever, and nobody is at fault. It's just the way of the world. Our plastic wine glass in hand, time ebbs and flows, slowly wearing away the foundation of the civilization until it collapses upon itself. At least that's when we say to comfort ourselves. There's nothing to do about it. These things can't be stopped. They just are. I'm going to stop there. But as you read this story about the suicide of Venezuela, I was hard-pressed not to think about America or any other place in the world. And he says that we give ourselves the license to think that things are not forever. You know what's interesting about patents? They have that very phrase in it at the very end. That these rights are given to the assignee, the patentee or assignee, forever. How audacious is that statement, folks? That is contrary to this very observation, where we look around as tourists and we find all the failed nations giving license to the fact of how they fell as being some romantic idea. That the United States of America has forever in its land law, that its law of the land is forever, and we're going to watch it fail like any other old place. It's really and truly a sad thing because we were so close. This is the point I tell you, we're like in that foot race. We're that close. We either going to trip and fall on our face, or we're going to keep on going thinking we're last and then find out we're first, because that's just who we are. And we're never going to be wrong. We're never going to fail. Well, we failed a lot, but you know, when you're talking forever, that's a pretty long time. That's a pretty high bar to have placed in our law of the land that is being completely destroyed by these attorneys, by your representatives, by these political parties, by your monetary system, by your fiscal system based on this monetary debt. And this is a very interesting article. I found myself thinking, United States of America, you know, we had everything, and then we gave it up. And I can see how. I can see that it doesn't need to be, and I can see how we're going to do it. And we didn't have that republic because we couldn't keep it. We have to be the keeper of that republic, which is really this law of the land law. This law, the soil disposal law, coming from the fruits, the wonder that nature provides us, and our adherence to nature. Impliedly, we have to adhere to the nature, otherwise it becomes a fallow land. And how amazing that people take on this obligation and duty, and they make it prosper. In other words, all our problems that all these people, the refuge itself was the byproduct of a successful use of the land, and someone from the outside came to steal a byproduct of productive use, and then vanquished all those that created it. Think about how that dynamic is. Why? Because we didn't keep what we had. That keeping is our action point. This is our engagement with wanting to keep our way of life. It's pretty simple. That Venezuela, and I brought this up also. Remember last week I was talking about how the unqualified one, Obama, threatened Britain if they exit the EU. This is what happens to nations in the world underneath this monetary and fiscal policy, a global fiscal policy, if you don't go along. Now, I don't know why. I'm not sure. I'm not looked in at why. I've always puzzled why the Venezuelan people haven't risen up in this common help for themselves to fix that. I mean, their public workers have a 5-day weekend because they don't even have enough electrical power. Why the society hasn't risen up around itself is kind of interesting to me. But this is an imposition, an external imposition, that when you don't go along, you're subject to. Well, I keep saying you have to have an independent mind, an independent medium of exchange, an independent way of going at it. And for us in America, the law of the land provides that black and white independence. I know, and I'm reminded that I just said that. Solomon was on Freaker's Ball, and he talked about this independent. I'm absolutely with that. In this case, though, I need to say it this way. In other words, you're in the dependence, in independence, is what he's saying. And I've read the word like ignorance is ignorance. You can read these words this way, but I need to use it as the separateness that we see is promoted today, independent, away, but different. We have an independence of use that fortifies everyone. And when we can be left to our own, our nature is that we produce more for us, and on the most, we're pretty charitable people when we can do that. And certainly when you can actually fortify yourself with a monetary system that pays you for things outside of what you do, when you have things that you can't trade in times when they're in abundance. You still need to survive. And we've gotten together to do that. That's the society we've created. But it's come from this law of the land, that the people in Venezuela are being destroyed. And I don't know that it's just a political party here that wants to see this. I'm certainly these people in the political party, well, unless they're the agents of that change, they're not really wanting their people to rise up. This is the same. They have the same problem, even if they're an occupying force. If they're not, then this is just an innocent bunch of people who are being oppressed by the outside world. That this reminded me more of America as much as it does Venezuela. We are just in a different timeline because of the physical power we have in the world. And that's military, folks. You're just a big bully and brute. We're not living in the breach of, we're not living in the peace that we're supposed to convey to each one of us in the United States. We're now big breachers of the peace. Under the illusion of peace. Ammon Bundy can't be in prison if there's an actual peace, folks. He'd be out working his cattle. We don't recognize the war against us here. The same thing, the way that they're destroying us. They don't have power in Venezuela. What do you think taking out all the power generating dams is going to do underneath this imposition, a carbon taxation imposition? What do you think your life's going to be like, folks? It's the same thing. These are mirrors to what's going on internationally. It's coming to everywhere. If Britain doesn't do this, I want them to stand up and be themselves and do their thing, the people. But if Britain doesn't, the things that are threats right now, we're going to put you to the back of the K, are a very real consequence of going against being under the thumb of organized crime. They'll attempt to break your knees. Here they're going to break a back, or we're going to kill a nation here. And so I couldn't help but reading. I see the United States of America and its law of the land is such a formidable force against what you see being imposed that it hasn't made itself known in the people, through the people, is a wonder and a tragedy. And yet, when I come in and use it in our little small way, and the people I work with, my colleagues that we work with this, it's an absolute block to what they think they're going to be doing. It's an exposure of their criminal nature as well. And it's coming to the point, I say we're infiltrated and surrounded, making the evidence of the case. This is not an opinion. You all say, oh, we're going to go to the constitutional sheriff and all this. We're going to, well, yeah, you can do that, but they're all constitutional sheriffs, so stop that nonsense. You're just looking for the officer that's going to enforce the law the way it's supposed to be. They're all constitutional, all the way. That's what that oath is all about. And guess what? That's their contract, isn't it? There you are. Now we're back into contract law. It has nothing to do with constitutional sheriff. It's about it's the integrity and fiduciary in the man or woman in the office to affect what the United States of America's land laws are and property laws, which are you just to your own, produce to your own, don't affect anybody. Or do they become the bully and the brute and come after you for revenue, claiming that you're doing some commercial activity that it has regulation authority to? Well, that's the convolution, isn't it? So, it's not just that you try and get constitutional people in. You're trying to get people that are going to return to the law and be integrated with the law and not adulterate the law of the land. It's very hard for people to see that right now. There's not very many people that even know how to utilize this at all. And I'm because of who I work with and who they're working with, and who we're explaining this thing to and what they're doing. And folks, it's coming. There's slowly more people coming. We're getting more and more people coming to the offices that we need. It just takes a long time. Elections only happen every so often. You have to be there in the right place. You can't get behind your keyboard. You got to have people in the field working with people who want to do what they think they can do and explain them the better way to go about it so that our near future may actually start to turn a lot quicker. And most of the people, I mean all of them so far, we're talking to have no clue of the stuff I tell you behind the woodshed every week. No clue. I don't mean about the news. I mean about the internal support I tell you is there, like I did earlier for the first hour or so of the broadcast, going through 3 points of a 7-point declaration, so-called. It's magic to most people. It's entertainment. You don't understand it's not doing what it claims to do. And it says it right on the first entry of what the title of the paper is. And more importantly to me, it said it by what court they filed it to. So you don't see that, you don't have the eyes to see that, you get absorbed by its authority. And don't realize it's a big show, it's a big game show, it's a big House of Thrones, I don't know, anything you want to call it. It's not what it's supposed to be, it's what they got you to believe it is. And while that happens, your nation is committing suicide. You're putting the knife to your own throat. You're the accessory to the crime against you. And how do we stop it? You take the knife away, folks. That's the first thing. Take the knife away. And we won't even do that. So, suicide in Venezuela. I ask you folks, when you finish reading that, do you not think, if you have any sense of it, do you not think about America? Look around you. In Britain, any so-called democratic nation, look around you. Even if you're in the West, democratic Zion West imposition, you are being pressed to go further to destroy yourself. Where are you when that happens, folks? What are you dealing with when you're in a world like that? It has to be a very fundamental question to ask. And then I ask you, once you've figured out that it's not what you thought it was, and it is, even if you can't identify what it is, but it's not right, what are you doing about it to stop it? What are you really doing about it to stop it? For as ineffectual as you might think you are, what are you trying to do that you think you're doing about it? Because there's coming the time, we're here already, I mean it's in the news. We talked about it. This interesting thing called the monetary system, these Federal Reserve notes, these things that actually rule our lives for some reason. And it seems like the more you have, the more you're ruled, because you got to be careful of what they're going to do. Remember, they're trying to look around for stealing it. They try to steal it at every turn. It's the same thing they hand you when they take your life away. Has to be an odd reality to consider. But it happened again. Tamir Rice was shot. You saw it, seconds. And they didn't find any wrongdoing with the cops that shot this young kid who had I think a fake gun. But it's all about how much they can pay you after. They don't care about shooting you. But Cleveland agrees to pay Tamir Rice's family $6 million over the shooting. It was a 12-year-old death on November 2014. This is under the threat of a civil rights suit. And so your life is reduced to whatever they think they can get away with after a number of years, whether or not you have a properly placed lawsuit, even with these plunderers and these attorneys. Remember, they set this system up and keep it going by their judges. Don't forget that part. And business is good, folks. And where do they get that money, so-called? But from the taxpayers and the property owners who don't understand that they don't have deeded land, but there's a patent down there that the title of which doesn't say give any reservation to the state. Why? Because their enabling acts didn't allow to it. The very purpose for why the land was ceded to the federal government, to clear up that implied or possible encumbrance. They come in and pay you for the death of you. Well, you don't get it, you're dead. But they'll pay it to your family. The cops don't get penalized. The city doesn't get penalized. The taxpayer gets penalized. And that's supposed to be the moral equivalent. This Federal Reserve notes debt instruments are the moral equivalent of killing a 12-year-old boy. For whatever reason, folks. For whatever reason. There was a time, folks, you would have to actually physically shoot at a cop before he had justification, just grounds to protect himself. Now 1/2 of a second is all that they need. Just the fact that the proximity and the time is plenty. Half a second's plenty to have you dead. And money, apparently, this evidences of debt apparently make the world go round. What world do you live in where debt notes, debt obligations are sufficient to pay for someone's life? I can't even imagine. I mean, I blank. My mind just went blank. I went so blank I forgot to keep talking. Because I think about what I say. Sometimes I don't think about this stuff before I get here. So how right was it? There's the legalism. If we pay you, we don't have to go through the rigmarole of evidencing how wrong we may have been. Does anybody observe all this stuff? Yeah, I know you do. You see it. You know it's wrong. But as I said, we don't mass ourselves against the policies and the court system that continues to allow this. It was only the threat of going through even the corrupt system that they didn't even want to mess with that caused this, to the tune of $6 million. That doesn't come out of anybody's budget, but the pocket of the property owner. Pretty fascinating how they've gotten the landed people to be slaves. Now, you don't see yourself as a landed producer when you're on your house, but the land law says you are. And what they've done is they've converted you to a resident. They've converted your holding to a deeded holding less than fee simple. And that's the other thing. I didn't even talk about, they don't talk about the quality of the deed. We don't even know what the government has. Is it fee simple or less than fee simple? Is it paying property tax on that land as a corporation doing business in the state? There's all kinds of discussion on this, folks, that we don't know. No one else I know answers or asks. That would at least give us a handle on how bad it is that we at least got a place to start. I look at this Tamir Rice kid. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, what is there to say? We allow this in this society. This is not a good deal. Authorita, military, killing in the streets, and it's okay because we can compensate you. Really? With stinking abyss notes? Really? Really? And what about those stinking abyss notes? How are you going to get them? Unless Venezuela capitulates to the demands of the World Development, the development banks and all that, and the Western way. You don't get what you need. And apparently those people have absent how to do it for themselves, which is really fascinating to me. There may be legitimate reasons. It's not apparent to me. So, that's just my ignorance on that is I don't understand why they aren't getting together for themselves. Seems to be first line in my mind that we would, but apparently not. And that's something else we have to consider. When the time gets tough, we may not come together as much as we think we will. And I've told you that's a real high possibility. When times got tough for me, I found out there was nobody that knew enough to help me, and I was stuck on the inside, and I wasn't given anything to help myself. Ironically, it was the purported criminals in the prison, not the prison, but in the jail, that were, I didn't know how they did it, but all of a sudden I was getting pencils and paper. And they knew that I needed it. I was in ISO. I was fascinated at what goes on behind the scenes when you're locked down and can't do nothing. It's why I tell you, when you find yourself living in an open-air prison, you find out what you still can do, and you do that much. That this monetary system is taken from you. You're going to go through this world, you think that it's coming down all right, else Venezuela's going down. I'm telling you, it's a mirror to what's happening in the United States of America. I told you last week that the hub of the Sustainable Development Agenda 21 imposition, the policy imposition, comes out of Berkeley. They promoted a $15 an hour wage, and then they found out when it got passed that all of a sudden 500 people lost their jobs. It wasn't the next day, folks. If you want to see how this technocracy tool comes on you and works, you think something's coming down good, and they got something they're working on to work it better for them, their bottom line. I tell you, it's about the bottom line, and you ain't part of it. You're only as part of it as they can figure out how to work you to death or get rid of you, and this is what the very next day the stories popped out. Where are you going to be working when they start firing you or they start removing your jobs? Maybe that you didn't even know the technology was that way, that this story came out. And you have to start thinking about what's the future going to be like when you don't have a job and you're not going to get one. Because these people have made it situated, these types of things, through the TTIP and the TIP and all these other so-called free trade agreements, which are nothing but theft by extortion and coercion and treason and all this other nonsense that they patch up really good. You know, the TTIP that the MEPs in Europe cannot witness without signing away some kind of an affidavit. Why not one of them steps up and says, well, I'm not doing it, and so you can force the rest not to see it? Why one doesn't stand up to object to that, so the rest can't even see the bill, so that they could vote that they've never read it, and then they could kill that TTIP, is an interesting dynamic in people. But no, they sign that little paper, and they have to go in and be secretive about it, and they can't tell anybody, they can't copy it down, can't do anything. It seemed to me when they put that kind of restriction, you say, well, I'm not going to care then. That room gets locked up. In fact, get it out of our building. How's that? But no, why do we keep up? But so these corporations and these governments are working all together. And probably because the corporations are inside the government, like the bar association is nothing but a corporation, right? Same thing, same model over and over again. This next week after I told you that the policy, Agenda 21, Sustainable Development Policy Hub of Berkeley promoted $15 an hour wages. The law passed in California, and as soon as it did, they gave notice they were going to drop 500 jobs because of that $15 an hour. On this waterfront, robot longshoremen are the new contenders, was the next story. On one end of the dock of America's busiest port, tractor trailers haul containers through dense stop-and-go traffic. Sometimes they collide. Sometimes the drivers must wait, diesel engines idling, as piles are unstacked to find the specific container they need. A few hundred yards away, advanced algorithms select the most efficient pathway to the autonomous carriers to move containers across the wharf. The 4-story high orange machines cradle their cargo, passing quietly within inches of each other at speeds as fast as 18 miles an hour, but never touching. Self-driving cranes on trucks stack the containers and then deliver them to waiting trucks and trains with minimal human intervention. Next story. The driverless truck is coming. It's going to automate millions of jobs. It's going to automate millions of jobs. We now have a new definition for the word automate as I understand it. A convoy of self-driving trucks recently drove across Europe and arrived at the port of Rotterdam. No technology will automate away more jobs or drive more economic efficiently than the driverless truck. Shipping a fall truckload from L.A. to New York costs $4,500, and labor representing 75% of the costs. But those labor savings aren't the only gains to be had from adoption of driverless trucks. Folks, you're looking at the transportation sector of sustainable development. I want to ask you, when all your longshoremen don't have work, because these automated systems came into play way back when they told us the machines were coming to help us. Yeah, they're going to help us out of a job. Where every driver in trucks is now removed. What are you folks that used to have those jobs going to do for a living? Where do you get your minimum wage? On the heels of finding that laws are made to give you all these funds, minimum wage, your austerity funds, where are you going to get a job when we find out the transportation sector is automating you out of a job? Automation means you're out of a job. Where are you getting your $15 an hour? How do you exist in this society now? They were promoting this whole idea on the longshoreman wharf. They're way more efficient. They're actually way faster than people. That alone, in shipping, would be a price, a value. Time is money here. But where are you going to be? You're getting the notice. I'm telling you, folks, if you're in these industries, and it doesn't end here. If you're in these industries, you're seeing the writing on the wall. This is going to go across your society. You're seeing the transportation part of sustainable development being technocratized from producer to at least the store. But where is your money to buy the supplies, folks? It was conceivable to me that this whole system, this transportation system could be programmed just to run itself. The producers make the parts that keep the thing running, and this unit just transports these parts that it needs from one end of the world to the next, and when something breaks, it goes back and gets put on the unit that gets fixed. And it's just self-sufficient to keep itself running. They don't need you. They need a whole lot less of you for sure. Well, a couple of you to grease the wheels, is that it? At what job? $15 an hour? Are some of you even making that in those industries already? So no, if you've already been cut out. See, that's what they did in the timber industry. Timber industry was like $15 an hour until they decimated it. Then they went down to $7. And people were loved to have that job. They actually went higher than $15 an hour. This is a long time ago. But people were scrambling to get the $7 an hour job. And they did a whole lot less when it came around. They had a lot of machines that were a lot more efficient. So, enough on that. I think I don't have to beat that dead horse into the pavement. There's a transportation sector that they're trying to get you to work with. And that is the fulfillment. This is the technocratic fulfillment of that. And your automation is you out of a job. I'm asking you, look into the future. And this goes for anybody who thought that anybody whose job becomes automated. How do you make it? Where do you go? You may have an answer. I'm asking you to consider it because you're going to need it. This is the system of plunder also, and it's driven by commerce on consumption that they also control. And maybe this is how they're controlling it. No different than what they do to justify the tearing out of a dam, which is really green but they defined as not, is they say they're going to get the power because you're going to use less. That means they don't have to produce so much, which means they don't have any carbon loading. No footprint. When you're not using as much, they don't have to produce it. That's how they're going to generate more power. That's the insanity that they are working in this very same thing with jobs, and the very same thing with the transportation sector, and how they're going to make these corporations just run on automatic pilot without you, or money, not very many of you. And this will translate to almost all sectors of life. It eventually touch everything that you need, and it'll be something that you can't do without. And I'm asking you, what does that world look like to you? people are not liking it. And this is the thing, we sit quietly in the United States, but in other countries they're not liking it too much. This idea that the technocratic imposition comes to automate your job out of existence is coupled with these trade deals. At least last week it was reported in Germany, thousands of Germans rally against trade deals on the eve of the unqualified's visit, which he then promptly insulted all of them and threatened them. And so we at least see thousands of Germans. I don't know why hundreds of thousands of Germans, but at least thousands of Germans stepped up. How many do we have in the United States in the same problem? Survey showing plunging public support for TTIP and Germany. Well, okay, great. In the U.S. and Germany. Great, let's hear more. So there's more. If you thought you were by yourself, apparently not. This is not a good deal. This is going to automate you out of your existence, essentially, in favor of some other people's future planned for you. Planned you out of it. They don't care about you, so you're planned out of it anyway. With support for the transatlantic trade deal known as TTIP has fallen sharply in Germany and the United States. A survey showed on Thursday, days before Chancellor Angela Merkel and unqualified one Obama meet to try to breathe new life into the pact. Folks, that's breathing new life into something isn't a good sign, which shows this is the time to strike. This is the time to show resistance. This is the time to put your letters out. This is the time to do whatever you think you need to do in order to shut down this situation, and then turn your attention on the transportation side. If you're in those industries, or if you take food or whatever properties, whatever needs you have from transportation, it should interest you, because they're about to automate everything out of existence that you were using to pay for the things they produce. This is how insane this is. How are they able to take you out of a job which you used to buy the stuff that they were putting in the shipment that truck was hauling? How do they take the guy out of the seat of that truck and have him go buy the stuff in that truck? Is another wonder to me that they don't care. What they're doing is they're showing you that they're going to downsize your nations, depopulate your nations anyway. They're going to do it under strife. They're going to do it without a peaceful way, and that shouldn't be okay with you. But the Germans are standing up against some of this. The United States now, the survey is that people are, whatever messages we've been saying in the media, the non-media, and those of me like myself beyond media, let's get to this, folks. Forget this media. It's time for action. We got enough. We got enough information. Time to get roll up our sleeves and do something. That the sentiment is coming that they don't like. People are seeing it as a great thing to hear, but we have to start doing it right. A few people protesting out in the streets isn't going to be it. In fact, there's a report, and I don't know if I'm going to ever get to it. The cops, as I told you before, they're training to handle protesters. I said stop going in the streets. I said that years ago. You have to go inside the institution now and rattle the cage from inside with the objective basis, the black and white, that they cannot respond to. And hopefully you get enough of you people that are all in doing that you make a big enough mass force against their momentum that you start to change the tide of where they think they're going to go. Here it is, the MEP Luke Flanagan's visit to the viewing room of TTIP. He says is a farce, and thank you to Gary L. This is on Gary L's Road, the Road Less Traveled website. He's got this article and a video. This is where you see the people controlling the representatives of the people in government, constraining their activity to review a document promoted to be the most open document ever. This should tell you something. And you can't really do much of anything to interact with the document, to review it, to debate it, nothing. You can't disclose it or anything. And Gary L's put an article up on his website. I'll give you a link in Post-Production Broadcaster. The video is amazing. Just what the controls that they have. You see what the future brings in this new type of global governance is going to be exactly what you see, or maybe even worse, actually, because you're going to be on the tip of somebody's spear with this. But he's not liking what he sees. He calls it out. He actually has a final question, which is, I thought, important for you all to see also. He didn't accept a contract agreement. He has to have a term defined, and that sends him on a new journey to try and get the answer, which probably is not coming. But that's your future. This is what these people do. They put themselves in an authority, and you agree to keep following along with it, and not enough of you step up with these basic common sense, not common is in the agenda, but just basic sense, foundational questions. If you were to start asking them now and insist on an answer and don't move until they have given you an answer, you will start to gum up the works. And if you do what I do, even more, more of us do it, we're going to really start to put the kibosh on a lot of this stuff. So secrecy is the big deal. And so exposing the secrecy was a big deal as well. And I've told you there's a dynamic in people, and we may have just found the proof of this condition. I've been critical of Snowjob Snowden and what he brought, and really what we found out was what he was bringing as maybe documents was actually what was stated to us by another gentleman in 2005. It wasn't really anything really new. There was the exposure that this was actually going on, and I told you be careful. This exposure is what they do to dumb you down on it, to get you to stop referencing to it. Because this is about secrecy. As long as they keep you from asking the questions and being active and engage it, they win. They'll win whatever they want to do. Well, it comes out apparently as a discussion that Snowden surveillance leaks made people less likely to read about surveillance. And this is what I told you the danger was. When you bring it out, the people will demean it and move it away and then not be interested in it or be afraid of it because they see the truth of it and they feel powerless against it. And the study, a new Oxford University study has published empirical evidence showing that government mass surveillance programs like those exposed by Edward Snowden makes us significantly less likely to read about surveillance and other national security related topics online. It goes on, it has a chilling effect and all this. I would say the exposed by Edward Snowden, actually exposed to the point because it may have been, I think it was more of a plan. They want you to know this is going on. I have to, and I told you that not only will they get you not to respond to it, they'll get you to dismiss its importance, and you won't move against it, and it will get what it wants. And look at what's happened. Nothing has slowed down on the surveillance side. Nothing has slowed this down, even though we all know. And so this is what my observation is fulfilled. I sense it's Snowjob. Whether or not he's intended that, I really can't tell you that. That's obviously something I can't do. But this smells of a setup beyond, to high heaven, given you believe in heaven. If not, okay, wherever. We have the evidence here that exactly the dynamic that happens in people happened because you were told. And it's a little disappointing because for all we talk about railing against it, we don't. And they're getting what they want because we're not stopping it. The chilling effect was also written down back in just a few weeks ago. The chilling effect of mass surveillance is a silencing dissent online. It talks about your self-censorship and all that. This is a real factual things now coming from what I had anticipated from before, some things I've been in prior life doing and watching and the response and why you do things and why people do it, why they don't do it, what affects them, all these kinds of ideas. This is why I think it came out. This was a plan, and they've done exactly what the plan was supposed to be. No matter what all comes out about it, this is what the effect was that they did it. And matter of fact, even if Snowden was innocent and he thought he was just an innocent, they show him, they play him off to be a pretty intelligent dude. So I don't know, but even if he's innocent, it's possible they used this whole condition to do exactly what they needed. And if I can say my fears have come upon me, that apparently the people are responding in the way people respond to this stuff. Where people are apathetic and they're also fearful. And so here it is. I got two more links now. Recent discussions, at least by these surveys, they're explaining this is what's going on. It was predictable at some level this way. But it's what they want, because they want to get this as a natural consequence of your existence. They don't want you to feel that you can rail against it. And you find out, like the FISA court, or there was just a news. Not one search warrant underneath this secrecy court has been rejected. Actually, they got what they want, folks, and everyone's feeling helpless against it, and that's what they want. And so I'm not going to call an end to this thing with Snow Job Snowden. I'm saying that what my theory was, if it was a theory at all, my observation, some experience, was that would be what happened, is now coming out now to let you know. They're letting you know that you're fulfilling their plan. Another opportunity they give you to say, well, we told you, you should have stepped up. And I'm saying you should have stepped up. Unless you want the plunder, this nonsense upon you. So the secrecy that goes to your representatives is extended over to you, self-censoring, chilling your dialogue amongst yourself. Indirectly affecting your First Amendment, which y'all feel you have a right to say. It's pretty fascinating what we'll allow as an indirect attack and not attack back. And so my problem was, and I guess go quickly here, my problem has been, it's not, everyone wants to say, I'm not doing anything illegal. And I've given you a couple of anecdotal reasons why you got to be concerned about having some third party who believes they have a badge on their chest to do some kind of a duty underneath some war of terror on you, that they will take this information and they will misinterpret it, either by sheer ignorance or design. In order to put you in a place, they need you. A story comes out to prove this. Oregon intelligence cops spied on director of state civil rights office for tweeting Black Lives Matter. Now this report, you need to kind of read to see how this works. Now, I want you to pay attention to how the observer, the investigator so-called, actually makes stuff up. He doesn't apply even common sense to what he's doing in order to fulfill what he reads as being compliant with his job to out the guy in the Oregon DOJ as being some kind of causing some kind of violation. You need to see how the cops, again, too smart to be a cop and too psychologically stable is not my definition. Supreme Court's confirmed that 3 times, I think now maybe 4. That these people looking into your stuff, into even if you're innocent, where it is innocent, will fabricate a problem for you that you will have to deal with. And you're lucky if you're in a position to be able to survive that, because this has to do with an attorney even within the DOJ that got hit. He's pretty protected generally. What about you in a lesser instance? This is what's coming on. This is why this is so important that we strive against this surveillance state. They make stuff up because they're bored. They got nothing to do, and they got an agenda to fulfill. They got a job to keep because they can't go get a truck driver's job. They're not going to go work on the ports. They got some automated robot doing that for you. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope everyone was okay on the Spreaker. We'll get the blogcaster done in the post-production. I'll get that file up for everybody else. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you to our RLM and Grimner for working out the problem with the servers and getting Jules on. And Jules, thank you for doing all that you did and whatever you did there. I noticed there were some things that you did to get the broadcast out for people. Thank you for all the work that you do. Again, folks, there's a lot of work behind the scenes goes on just to keep us going. And terrestrial broadcasters, thank you for beaming the signal out. And those of you that want to contact me, contributions and donations of things that you want to have requests, and markonthebeast@yahoo.com. Otherwise, get the podcast out, the Pazcast. Or tell people to other networks to sign on here to Synchronocast us. Just pick up the link to the Shoutcast when it gets back up. It'll be up by maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But it's just some kind of a power thing. Thank you again. Take care. I'll be back next week. Tech Diffs and nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
50 years left.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.